Good evening, everybody. It's Bobby Piton here, and I am going live like an extra 1 or 2 minutes early so I can get this posted. So thank you for bearing with me. And today is day 36 of the greatest book ever written. So thank you, everybody who's going to be joining. Thanks, Cheryl. Thanks, Jules. And thank you for the blessings and so forth. I hope everybody else has some good blessings as well. And so today was an interesting few readings, and we'll start talking about it once more people show up. Hey, Mason. Hi, Donna. How are you? And let me see here. Get this going here. And pull this down. Give me 1 second. Let me see. Thank you guys for your patience. Get this going. Okay, so that's that. Yeah, I can get really riled up, Cheryl. You are absolutely right. Hi, Deanie. How are you? Phyllis. Um, you know, keep in mind it was a Friday night. I had a little wine, just totally chilling and so forth. So that's what happens when I have a drink or two and just kind of unwind after a long week. So that's what you got to see. You got to see me relax, speaking my mind a little more than usual. Maybe, well, as Liz said, unfiltered Bobby is what you guys got. So thank you for your patience with that. And so I'm just going to post this in one other spot, and then we can get going. Day 36, just like that. Day 36 out of 365 to go. And so we are moving along pretty fast here. It's going a little faster than I would have thought. So let me see here. So that's that. Okay. And so, let me see. Why is this taking me so long today? Okay, so, okay. We are good to go, folks. So, just got, I hope everybody's been following along on YouVersion. You can download it. And we are at day number 36, Exodus 21. And so this was pretty interesting because this was kind of like the rule book that God pretty much set up, which is really fascinating to see the rule book with regards to how people should be treated, what the consequences should be if you hurt slaves, what consequences if you hurt your neighbors, and so forth. And I did find it pretty fascinating that the amount of details that they go into in trying to set fairness and equity. And when we think about living in the West, living in the United States or Europe, and I've often talked about it with regards to the Judeo-Christian West, and how we've been set up as a nation, and the founding of this country, the founding of our civilization, that has led to the greatest the greatest success for the largest number of people from all over the world. There's no other nation that I'm aware of that's ever had every corner of the world want to live in. Nobody's come close to being able to replicate that type of system where you have, hundreds of different people from all over planet Earth, all different types of religion, all different types of, I guess you can say, value systems, work habits, intelligence levels, trades, you name it. They all want to come to the United States. And there's a reason for that, is because we are the best nation that's ever existed on this planet, because we put God first, and we have our spirits fully utilized by being free. I think we are all intrinsically born free. There's been a tremendous amount of pressure to steal our freedom over time. And when you kind of go through this with regards to Exodus 21 and then Exodus 22, Exodus 23, part of that freedom is also treating each other and each other's property correctly. And it's not a coincidence that in the Ten Commandments, which is why I say God first, Ten Commandments, followed by, basically, the U.S. Constitution in that order. So God first, Ten Commandments, U.S. Constitution is my personal belief system. And, everybody out there doesn't have to agree. I know I was talking to my sister today, and she mentioned to me some people that she knows have been chiming in, listening to what I have to say. And, I like getting feedback, especially from people that have known me a long time, because, they're just going to call it as they see it. And I like that, but I need to know who's calling it as they see it, because I have their perspective or the experience of talking to them over time. And she made a comment that somebody called her and said, I like Bobby, but I think he's a little too religious for my taste. And my response to that is, that's pretty funny, because I think a lot of people chime in because I'm not too religious. Like, I'm a religious person, but I don't try to force my religion onto anybody. I just say what I believe and is the secret of this country's success, secret of my success and other people that I've observed over time. You can look at the wealth distribution, folks. People, for the most part, large numbers, and the largest number of people that, aside from the cheaters, I guess you can say, in the globalist elite class, most human beings, when they follow Judeo-Christian values and they do what's fair and they do what's just and they treat everybody with respect, it's the whole basis of capitalism. Like, capitalism comes down to trust. If you don't have a system that reinforces trust, the whole thing just shuts down. So a lot of these globalists, whatever you want to call them, I don't even want to use the language, right? Because we're on a different recording here with going over the greatest book written. But these globalists free ride. They're not trustworthy. They're scummy. And they're basically satanic communists at this point, but they free ride on the Judeo-Christian values that built the system. And this is what these people have done, is they figured out how to manipulate our structure to cheat us and basically leverage our goodwill, our faith that, we're dealing with people that try to do the right thing just like we do, but they don't. And so we need to be able to get better systems in place to spot these scumbags, these cheats, and make sure that we kick them out of here, especially the atheist ones. There's a couple classes. There's the atheist ones that are cheats, and then there's the satanic communists that have infiltrated our system. Both of them need to go. And as far as I'm concerned, China could try to, since that's what China espouses, it seems like it should be a magnet for all these scumbags, because they're cut from the same cloth as the CCP. So you would think that they would welcome a little more competition of scummy individuals just like they are. Now, keep in mind, folks, I don't have a problem with the Chinese people. I think that they're enslaved. They're probably just like us. We have horrible leadership in place. That doesn't mean that all Americans are bad, because we have scummy leadership in place in various states where these people behave like criminals. But it all ties into this Exodus 21 and Exodus 22, because I think about this theft that's taking place and the rules that are pretty much laid out with this, with regards to what should happen to people that are stealing and what the penalties should be. And that if you steal an ox, for example, they got to steal 5. You have to pay a penalty of 5 oxes. You steal a sheep, you got to pay back in 4 if you get caught. Well, the only thing I would say is, I wish the numbers were a little higher, right? So maybe if you steal an ox, you should pay back with 50 ox, and really discourage the theft. But what I did find interesting about these penalties is that if you couldn't pay, no problem. You go right into slavery. So you better really choose wisely, because if you're going to steal stuff that isn't yours, you get enslaved. So in the U.S. system and a lot of places around the world, if you break the law, you steal, you're in a different form of slavery. You're in prison. You're a slave to a system. You're put away. And so I don't necessarily think, um, that's necessarily a bad thing. The only thing I would say about the prison system in this country is that it should be structured more in a way that we don't magnify the criminals. If they're there to serve a certain sentence, they should have their rights respected. They should have severe consequences if other prisoners are violating their rights. I would say even harsher than in the real world, because you're trapped, you're in a confined space. And if that means that you need to, you can operate in a sense in more of a private type of quarter as you're doing your time, I think that would be a much fairer system. I never liked the system where someone's in prison, they're there, they're trying to serve their time, and then they're violated repeatedly by other criminals within the prison system. I'm not a fan of that at all. I think that we have the technology nowadays where you can literally, probably through computers, someone's in a cell, they come out, 5 minutes later, they got someone else comes out of a cell, and they just kind of rotate out. And that's just the way it is. And everybody gets to have their privacy and their space, because right now they're just treated like animals. So it shouldn't come as a shock when people are coming out and then acting more like animals, because they've been continually, disrespected while they're serving their time. So anyways, that's what I think about with this, because they mention if you can't pay back, you have to be sold, and you can be sold into slavery, so to speak, if the person that you cheated did that. The other thing that I thought was pretty interesting is, if you accidentally struck a pregnant woman. So this is really interesting because it ties into this whole abortion issue that we're living through right now in the U.S. As I've mentioned before, I do not think it's a coincidence that abortion came into existence right as we opened up trade with China. What's a better way to defeat the United States, which was the greatest nation in the history of the world up to that point by a wide margin? Now it's still the greatest, but it's shrunk its lead. It was far stronger of a position in the early 70s. The average American was killing it up to the early 70s relative to the rest of the world. And in fact, I did a clip about what minimum wage should be based on productivity gains up through now. And if you look at that clip that I probably did about a month ago or so, the price of a barrel of oil was about 2 hours worked by a minimum wage person. 2 hours. And I said, based on, productivity gains and inflation in the country, theoretically minimum wage, if it kept up with our productivity as a nation, and it kept up with inflation, minimum wage should be about $30 an hour. Now, keep in mind, folks, I'm a conservative, and I know plenty of people that are in business that are like, Bobby, you're crazy. You can't. These people that are working, my business would be broken if I had to pay them $30 an hour. And my response to them is this: you should be able to pay them $30 an hour if we didn't get scammed and ripped off with our tax structure in this country. Because our tax structure, we used to give the government $1 out of every $8 that we made. And now we give the government $1 out of every $2.50 that we made. So what I'm trying to say is, if we shrank the size of the scam of the government, of this crap that LBJ passed and all these corrupt politicians passed, you have to simultaneously completely cut 20, 30, 40% of the size of the federal government. And then minimum wage would probably go to $20, $25. Boom, just like that. Because, that's what would happen. If you freed up all that money, the average person would be able to make more. As it stands now, the government's crowding out what people used to make to just just have a decent living. And in a sense, the government has turned a very large portion of the United States population into slaves. And they made them dependent on the very government that stole all the money to begin with the structure. So these two things are hand in hand, folks. I'm not advocating raising minimum wage to $20, $15, $20, $30 an hour, which is where it should be based on where it used to be relative to inflation and productivity gains, unless you simultaneously cut the size of the government. So I would do it in tranches. I'd be like, you know what, we're going to raise minimum wage by $1, but we're going to cut taxes by $2.50, like whatever the 2.5%, so to speak. I would figure out how to cut government to pay for every minimum tax increase across this country. And so that businesses can very easily absorb it. And in fact, they'd be much better off because there'd be that much stealing taking place because there's a massive skim going on in the government. And when I thought about this exodus, that's what I kept going back to. But going back to this abortion thing, simultaneously, when Roe v. Wade was passed, and they started to execute Americans, there's been over 60 million Americans that have been executed through the laws in this country. It's more politically correct to kill innocent babies that have they don't have a voice than it is to throw people in the gas chamber. So in the United States, the same criminals that some of them were involved with World War II, they came in the United States and they said, you know what, we couldn't take Germany down. Let's try to take the United States down. But, we got to change up our game plan. So instead of executing, rounding up people that we want to kill, let's kill the babies because they can't say anything, but we'll convince people that it's okay because the mother said it's okay to kill the baby. And so this is the game they played. And meanwhile, China went from $250 a year in per capita income to over 10,000. It went up 40-fold, while Americans killed off at least 200 million Americans. Because if you think of the 60 million, plus if they went and had kids and then they had kids again, you're talking two generations of babies. Two generations of Americans. It would have been 60 to 120, give or take some people. It would have probably been about 200 million, 240 million Americans. This country would be about 500 million. Think how much better this earth would be with 500 million free Americans versus 300 that are, where 150 of them are petrified. They're afraid of their own shadow. They're unfortunate. It's unfortunate, but these evil people that have hollowed this country out, manufacturing base, convince people to kill their babies, where a lot of these mothers were basically half of them were probably suffering from prepartum syndrome, where they were depressed and in their moment of weakness, they had some sick people, and I guess I hate to even say the medical profession, just very evil people convinced them to slaughter their baby. And it's really it's very sad and disappointing. But in Exodus, they even talk about a pregnant woman that gets hurt or something happens to the baby, that the person that hurts that baby and that baby died, they get taken out. So that's, think about it, folks. This is the Old Testament. This is, they didn't mess around back then. You hurt a woman and she loses her baby, you're out. You're gone. And, think about what this country would look like if we followed Genesis, folks. It would look a lot stronger, I would say. I'm not saying, I would say I would prefer that people just weren't allowed to kill babies so that we don't have to, have the God's law enacted on them. But that's not the world we live in right now. So we can do the next best thing. Let's try to mobilize, use everybody who believes in this, who believes in the innocent, protecting the innocent, the most innocent among us. They've done absolutely nothing wrong. For the mothers that have babies that they can't take care of them, we can do better, folks. We can, what? If these lunatic lefties want to, and same with some corrupt Republicans, want to bring in 1 million people from another country that is, whatever, all these poor countries that can, they come here, they try to get on public aid now versus before when they were coming here and they just wanted a chance. Now it's like a lotto ticket. Are you kidding me? So we can afford to pay these folks with our taxpayers, but then we can't put systems in place to take care of some of these babies by having better education and better processes to make it easier to adopt. I was talking to someone who recently, him and his wife are trying to adopt a baby, and they said the process to try to adopt a baby is so time-consuming and tedious and discouraging. But meanwhile, if you want to go slaughter your baby, they'll take you in. When's the next appointment? They'll take you in on an express murder train. Hey, you can come in the next 30 minutes. We'll fill a spot for you. There's a baby to kill. And so it's just very bizarre that we're living in these times and not enough people are speaking up about it. So if that makes me a super religious person, then so be it. But I'm tired of looking the other way when all these crimes against the most innocent among us are taking place. protection of property. So then we were talking about we're talking about the oxes earlier. If this is pretty interesting, folks. So if somebody leaves money or goods with you for safekeeping, and somebody steals that money, you're on the hook. I don't know if a lot of people know that, but you really want to be sure. If you agree to watch somebody's stuff and something happens to their stuff when it's in your care, kind of the burden is on you to kind of prove that you didn't do anything, you didn't steal it or anything else. So you really want to be careful how you lend out your reputation and your time and what you decide to do on somebody's behalf, because you think you're doing them a favor. I'm always wary of that, and I always encourage them to find a professional service that has insurance for such a thing. First of all, it doesn't happen very often. There's only a couple people that I would ever do that for, but I just say, look, that's not my business. I'm not interested in overseeing and protecting your property. I got enough problems. I got to worry about protecting my own stuff, especially when you got a bunch of like the government doing what it does and keeps taxing everybody away, and you have a bunch of criminals being backed by the lunatic left that are trying to steal it from people because they can't create on their own. So they'll try to use different tactics, these communist tactics, to try to justify the theft of other people's property because they couldn't figure out how to create for themselves. So it's a pretty horrible situation. You have the lunatic left and these evil people. They created a situation of all these people that are dependent on government. They don't have any skills to do anything. They feel like they've been slighted. And then you mobilize all those folks that you've made sure can't take care of themselves, and you put them into a situation where they feel that they're brainwashed into thinking they've been cheated by somebody else, when the very people that did the cheating and created that situation for them are the ones that they should be going after. But instead they go after the ones that had nothing to do with their plight. It's very bizarre, but it happens all the time, folks. So anyways, this is pretty interesting about, once again, this is the Old Testament, folks. So I'm happy about the New Testament. But, if a man seduces a virgin who's not engaged, if he has sex, he's got to marry her. If the father doesn't want him to marry her, he's got to pay the father the amount of, the marital, whatever that marital, what is it called? I'm drawing a blank on the word here. Amount equal to the price of a bride price. This is really bizarre. I mean, I still to this day don't have an easy time getting, this is, I guess, why I don't follow the Old Testament fully, is because some of this stuff is just a little too crazy for me, that, parents could sell their daughters to somebody for the highest bidder. Unfortunately, folks, this is happening a lot of different places. Yeah, there we go, dowry. Happening all over the world still today. There's a lot of human beings. There's more human beings being sold today in sheer numbers than there's probably ever been. Maybe percentage-wise it's fallen, I would hope. But these dowries got to go. The dowry system is alive and well in two of the most populous countries in the world. I think India and China both still have some type of dowry system, which is really sad. China, doesn't surprise me. India, I would argue you guys, you need to do better. You believe in democracy, you believe in freedom. You got to end the dowry system at this point. It's kind of run its course. That's just my opinion. But at least you're not selling people into slavery like China. So it's a little different. The CCP folks, not the Chinese people, but the corrupt people within the CCP are doing that. And then they put them into slave labor and they try to deprogram them out west. They really make the Germans and the Nazis look like pikers. However, who knows how many of those Germans who were funded by very corrupt families and individuals around the world didn't make their way into China. Maybe they're the ones pulling the strings this whole damn time. It's a really good question. I wish we would find out the answer to. So anyways, so that's that with regards to Exodus. False rumors. Once again, there's a lot of discussion in the Bible about these false rumors and lies. And, when you think about it, These folks have literally taken the Bible and all the things that destroy a civilization that are outlined in the Bible. They basically ran with that playbook. I mean, that's what these elites have done in this country and worldwide. They've taken over media. They try to pass laws to silence people who want to speak up against this insanity. And they literally just pick up the Bible and say, hey, let's look at all the evil things that the Bible maps out, and let's try to do them ourselves, to hold people back, to create this slavery on people in America as well as worldwide. We're going to manipulate them, and they're not going to know if they're coming or going. And, when I read this, same thing, like take no bribes, for a bribe makes you ignore something that you can clearly see. A bribe makes even a righteous person twist the truth. Wow. Think about that, folks. Our entire political process has turned into a lot of various legalized bribes in the form of lobbying, PACs, super PACs, payoffs, jobs being given to people that were donors. Look at the guy out of, West Virginia, Manchin. Didn't he just get a job for the Biden administration, his wife? He's a sitting senator, and Biden gives his wife a $150,000 job. Meanwhile, they really need his vote to get that filibuster, I think to try to get the Senate to pass H.R. 1. And so this is happening right before our eyes. And there's no outrage that this stuff, because there's laws on the books that allow these criminal type activities that would common sense would say this is just wrong. But meanwhile, they figure out how to pass laws that allow them to do it as long as it's part of their little club. And this is what's wrong with this country, is that we are not doing enough to call these people to task and to figure out how to prosecute them. As far as I'm concerned, on some of these criminals, we need to get new people elected, and we need to go retroactive with some of these laws, folks. That's what I think is fair. You know what? You guys like to do these retroactive taxes. You like to do all this other crap that's retroactive. You know what? You broke the spirit of the law. You cheated. You did a bunch of stuff that was really scummy. And you said, well, that's the law. No problem. We're going to redo the law, and then we're going to go retroactively and say, that's the law. So two should play at this game. So we should go after these people. John, I like where your head's at, John. Anyways, these bribes are it's unbelievable. Like how much we're living through Genesis right now. I mean, literally the Bible put all this stuff through, telling us all this stuff well before it happened. It's pretty crazy. This is pretty good. So this is okay. This goes back. I'm gonna use my famous little whipping boy, the guy I think down in Texas. Someone by the name of Jay with an O last name. I don't want to call him out because maybe he's gonna send me some papers or something. But this little guy that has a Ferrari, right? Hey, I'm preaching the word of God. I need a Ferrari to do it. That guy. Anyways, Jesus told them, don't let anyone mislead you. Well, there's a lot of people being misled by this character. For many will come in my name and saying I am the Messiah, or they'll deceive many. This guy acts like he's like a miniature Messiah. And you will hear of wars and threats of wars, but don't panic. Yes, these things must take place, but the end won't follow immediately. Nation will go to war against nation and kingdom against kingdom. There will be famines and earthquakes in many parts of the world. But all of this is only the first of the birth pains, with more to come. Then you will be arrested, persecuted, and killed. You will be hated all over the world because you are my followers. Okay, guys, anybody out there who's a Christian? Okay, right now, I definitely think we're getting persecuted. I think some of us have probably been wrongly arrested in various capacities. But I definitely know we're hated on big time. If you guys don't know that at this point, I don't know what to tell you. But the mainstream corrupt establishment hates us. The vast majority of politicians, Republican and Democrat folks, both of them hate us. They hate true Christians that try to live their beliefs. We've been misled. Okay, I voted for a traitor named McCain, and I voted for Bush. I actually donated money to that guy, and went to D.C. because I believed hook, line, and sinker into the GOP message that they were about God first and our republic. And meanwhile, that SOB has his brother help him cheat for that election in 2000. Then he turns around and September 11 happens, which who knows? There's a lot of information that says that might have been something that was constructed, not the way we've been sold it on. And then meanwhile, 3 months after 9/11 in 2001, China enters the WTO before 60,000 factories leave American shores, and 3 to 5 million American jobs are destroyed. All that happened. Well, of course, while you open up the borders and let in millions of more people that will compete with the remaining jobs while you simultaneously destroy the industrial base of the United States. Yes, folks, these people are evil. They did this. They didn't do it by accident. They did it by design. Okay, all the while drugging up people with poppy fields from Afghanistan. Maybe that's why we went there, huh? And then between drugging us up there, Barry signing preferred rates for the Chinese to ship drugs into the United States, cheaper to ship something from China into the United States than someone shipping something from one state to the other. Think about that for a second. And that's what Barry did during his time. And that's why the number of people dying went from 3,000 to over 50,000 opioids. And then you got a family like the Sacklers, I think Purdue Pharmaceutical. They made $12 billion, and I think they're going to get fined $3 billion and admit no wrongdoing for all the people that died and overdosed on OxyContin. So pretty wild times, folks. Pretty wild times. So anyways, going back to this, many false prophets will appear and deceive many people. Sin will be rampant everywhere, and the love of many will grow cold. But the one who endures to the end will be saved. And the good news about the kingdom will be preached throughout the whole world so that all nations will hear it. And then the end will come. Okay, folks, I got to tell you something. When I see when the end will come, I'm not thinking negative. I'm trying to think positive. When I hear that the end will come, the end of the tyranny that we've all been living through in this world will end. That's my interpretation. I hope my interpretation's right. I don't want the end where we're all checking out together kind of thing. I prefer the end where the end is near. We're all seeing corruption. We're seeing evil. We're all rising up against it. We're all stopping it, and we're no longer going to tolerate it. I'm looking for that end of indifference, that end of looking the other way, the end of being fearful of us outnumbering these sons of bitches 47,000 to 1 and not doing anything about it. I'm talking about that end. I think that we only need 1% of the 47,000, 470 Americans out of every 47,000 to make just an absolutely glorious difference, to knock out all these scumbags across all levels of government, and then to expose all the people that have been cheating us the past 2, 3, 4 decades. And you know what? We take it all, take all their chips, every single last penny of them. None of them they don't get to keep any of it. Not their kids, not their grandkids. Strip it all away from them, all their wealth. And if there's consequences where they did a lot of horrific crimes against humanity, then you know what? They got to be prosecuted with treason, I guess. I don't know what to tell you. We didn't do it. They did it. And so if we get to that point where the end will come, I'm thinking the end for these people that have been cheating us, stealing, corrupting us, starting wars that didn't need to be had, profiting at death of babies, profiting at the death of Americans that were going off to war, and other countries being destroyed, profiting from that. Take it all. And as far as I'm concerned, if they created wars for the sake of profiting from it, then we as a nation are going to have to figure out how to pay back some of those countries that have been wronged in our name. That's a tough pill to swallow because it's not going to be cheap. You know, how many people died in other countries around the world because we had criminals heading up our governments here. That's a big problem, folks. And I'm not sure, how do we calculate that? But, we're going to have to figure it out to make it fair. If that was, in fact, if that proves out to be the case, that this happened, and it happened because we were asleep at the wheel. We were too busy doing other stuff, being entertained by a bunch of ingrates on TV that we paid for, all the stadiums. We paid for all the airwaves by defending them with our military, and meanwhile, these SOBs make all this money while other teachers and people that defend us overseas, and firefighters and so forth, and police officers are disrespected by the very people that are manipulating and abusing the system at our dime. So anyways, wow, this Matthew 24, I love Matthew, by the way. I tell you guys that every day when I read Matthew. It's gonna be very sad when I kind of run out of reading Matthew. I may have to just loop back over and start over with Matthew. The day is coming when you will see what David the prophet spoke about, the sacrilegious object that causes desecration standing in the holy place. Then those in Judea must flee to the hills. A person out on the deck of a roof must not go down into the house to pack. A person out in the field must not return to even get a coat. How terrible it will be for a pregnant woman and for nursing mothers in those days. And pray that you will fight. You will not be in the winter or on the Sabbath, for there will be greater anguish than at any time since the world began, and it will never be so great again. In fact, unless the time of calamity is shortened, not a single person will survive, but it will be shortened for the sake of God's chosen one. So when I read this, you know what I think about? I'm not going to kid you. When these rats, these scumbags that have cheated humanity for, probably hundreds of years for all we know, when they get cornered, these sons of bitches may try to drop nukes or do biological or chemical weapons on a massive scale because they know their gig is up. And I wouldn't put it past them that they're going to be attempting to do such a thing. And so, we do have to plan accordingly. Hopefully we have white hats, as they say, or good patriots that love this country, love humanity, love other human beings, that put God first, that will be in a position to prevent this insanity if it were to take place. But when I read this, that's what I think about. I think about how crazy and evil and just ruled by Satan these individuals are. And maybe that's why we have Space Force, folks. Maybe that's President Trump. He had the insight. He had the knowledge to say, you know what? We need to build Space Force. We need to protect from any type of detonation on U.S. soil, a detonation from coming in from space, because of most nukes, those weapons, intercontinental ballistic missiles or hypersonic missiles. Hypersonic missiles, folks, the United States is the only nation in the world that can fire a missile. I calculated it based on the estimates that I read about. The U.S., using the orbital spin of planet Earth, can fire a hypersonic missile to any spot on the planet in like 3 minutes. It's unbelievable. Like fully equipped with nuclear warheads. So the fact that we can do that is very. It's like it's a weird thing, right? Because you're glad we have the ability to do that if somebody tries to hit us, but you better believe they're trying to build that same capability to hit us on an offensive, and then that's a horrible situation. We can literally destroy the entire planet in under 5 minutes if this were to get ugly fast. And so, it's pretty damning stuff. And you guys don't even want to know what other stuff they have. That's just the tip of the iceberg. Some of the other things that these weapons that have been created. So when you read this, and you read this sentence, but it will be, not a single person will survive. When you read that line, he's not saying that to be cute, folks. If it gets really ugly, this is literal. I mean, this is not just said just in passing and people glance over that sentence. So let's hope that it never comes to that. Let's pray that it never comes to that. Let's find the right people to remove all this evil that has overtaken our government, our institutions, our educational establishment, and go back to being and living a God inspired Judeo-Christian life as a nation, and inspire other countries to do so, and cut off all funding and cut off all trade with nations that violate their own citizens' rights, that basically engage in slavery, that don't have our views, that have women hide behind sheets, no different than the KKK, but they're black instead of white sheets, and they call that progress, or that's some type of freedom that's tied to what so-called religion when it's more of a cult, all that kind of horse shit. I don't buy it. Just cut off all trade with them and make them feel the economic punishment that they deserve to free their own citizens. Because I got to tell you, countries where women have the rights that they're God-given rights, and every woman in the world should have a right to an education. They should have a right to vote. They should have economic rights. They shouldn't be treated like slaves. They're not 2/3 of a person, as some of these cults will try to say. And if we did that and we lived our values as a nation, guess what? Women in charge, they're less likely to send their boys and girls off to war and die. It's not complicated, folks. But when you have a bunch of moronic men who treat women, even though they were born to their mother, that's how warped these people are. You are born to a woman, and then you treat women as though they're inferior, but yet you were born because of a woman. Think of how moronic these individuals are. So anyways, with regards to the Satan sneakers, I think that's just like, I guess the biggest market for them is going to probably be China, folks. China's going to probably, maybe they're going to do 6.66 million of them over there. It's just absolutely ridiculous. Anyways, let's go on. Then if anyone tells you, look, here is the Messiah, or there he is, don't believe it. For false messiahs and false prophets will rise up and perform great signs and wonders as to deceive, if possible, even God's chosen ones. So I have warned you about this ahead of time. So if someone tells you, look, the Messiah is out in the desert, don't bother to go and look. Or he's hiding over there, don't believe it. For as the lightning flashes in the east and shines in the west, so it will be when the Son of Man comes. Just as the gathering of vultures shows there is a carcass, so the signs indicate that the end is near. And so, once again, it goes back to, we just need to cut these preachers off that are false prophets and use the Lord's name in vain to profit disproportionately. We're better than this. We shouldn't be funding these people at any way, shape, or form. If you have money to give to a church that isn't getting problems solved for the least of God's people, all of us, all of God's children, stop giving them money. Get involved and go help those people that need the help. Teach them how to fish. Get involved in shelters. Get involved in other organizations, and take on the burden with other family and friends and neighbors to solve it, so that you help these people that are downtrodden. Because obviously, there's nobody missing any meals in most of the religious institutions in this country, because they've become so corrupted and bloated. And, being raised Roman Catholic, and I'm still Roman Catholic, I'm not too big of a fan of sending any tribute from any money that I give to the Catholic Church to Rome when they have a criminal in the papacy right now. So I just can't do it. I can't bring myself to do it. And I told my wife, I'm just going. This is why I'm going through the Bible, folks, because I've had enough of this scam that's been run, where they didn't want to lose their tax deferred status last year, and they looked the other way. All these major institutions, they didn't fight for us after decades, 100, probably 50 years or more of taking our tax deferred money, so they don't pay any taxes in the community, and they build these little estates, and they live like high on the hog. And then when push comes to shove, and our government, basically steals our First Amendment right for religion, where are they to be found? Nowhere, because they don't want to rock the boat and lose their damn tax status. That's my problem. So anyways, let's go to the Psalm of David. Honor the Lord, you heavenly beings. Honor the Lord for his glory and strength. Honor the Lord for the glory of his name. Worship the Lord in the splendor of his holiness. See, we don't need a church to do that. You need the good book. You need the actually the greatest book ever written. But I guess some people refer to it as the good book. It is a good book because it's about good in a world filled with evil. And so we just need to acknowledge the true word of God, the Messiah, and the one and only Messiah, the only one that has the truth. And anybody else who speaks about the truth, it's never anybody's but Jesus Christ's word. And so that's just the way, that's the deal. And so you don't have, for all the people out there that are watching, they're like, Bobby, I don't believe in Jesus Christ. Fine. You know what? Read the Bible if you think if it inspires you from a literary perspective and living a good life, then just read it as though it's just a good how to live your life book. You don't have to believe that you don't have to believe it's God, and there's still a lot of unbelievable lessons for you to take away from it. But here's the deal: you live in this country, you should know where it stands. This country was founded by Judeo-Christian values. That's these values, folks. I'm not moving to India and I'm going to try to tell the Hindus, hey guys, Judeo-Christian values is why India is like really kicking ass. Like, you're going to look at me and be like, get the hell out of here, buddy. And all I'm telling you is you have a right to be here, and every religion does, but we know our place. Our place is we set this sucker up. Judeo-Christian values set this country up. Let's face the facts. That's the way it is. And, I'm tired of this making excuses and trying to act as though all these other religions are so pious and, equal standing with regards to what the rule books are here. Because I got news for you. I love Indians and I think it's a great ally of the United States. But Indians have a caste system, and there's lots of parts of India that still follow that caste system to this day, thousands of years later. Okay? So Judeo-Christian values are the ones that have freed more people on this earth, had allowed more people to prosper, to live freely with others of different faiths, other backgrounds. And that's just the way it is. Prove me wrong. Good luck looking. So anyways, the voice of the Lord echoes above the sea. The God of glory thunders. The Lord thunders over the mighty sea. The voice of the Lord is powerful. The voice of the Lord is majestic. The voice of the Lord splits the mighty cedars. The Lord shatters the cedars of Lebanon. He makes Lebanon's mountains skip like a calf. He makes Mount Hermon leap like a young wild ox. The voice of the Lord strikes when bolts of lightning. The voice of the Lord makes the barren wilderness quake. The Lord shakes the wilderness of Kadesh. The voice of the Lord twists mighty oaks and strips the forest bare. In his temple everyone shouts glory. The Lord rules over the floodwaters. The Lord reigns as king forever. The Lord gives his people strength. The Lord blesses them with peace. And that's another thing, folks. Okay? The United States, think about our ability over, before some corrupt people took the reins of our government. The United States had a history of not going in and trying to conquer anybody around the world, even though it had superior firepower. We could have taken the whole planet after World War II. That's the reality, folks. We're the only ones that had nuclear bombs. We had the strongest military. The average American made 15 times what the average person in Europe made. We could have taken Europe over. Just take the whole damn thing. We could have marched on China, taken out China, killed everybody that we wanted to. We could have, I hate to say it, but I'm just saying that if we were evil, if our religion was the way some of these other ideologies are, we would have taken the whole damn board and killed a lot of people in the process. And I'm glad that our religion never does that, never did that. There's been some sick individuals that have perverted our religion, but thankfully enough of us have made sure that hasn't happened. And I think we're at a point in time as Americans, as a Judeo-Christian nation, where we're trying to expose the evil among us, that people that have hijacked our religion and our beliefs and try to act as though they're us, these false messiahs, these fake, these Ferrari driving preachers, all these individuals they're just nothing more than deep state assets as far as I'm concerned. they're just told, hey, you know what? Those Americans, they like their Jesus and God, and go make some money, and we'll give you a lot of airtime, and maybe help pump you up with some interviews on our corrupt mainstream media assets. That's what's going on, folks. This is what Christ is talking about, or what was discussed with regards to Matthew. Anyways, we're on to Proverbs 7. So I got let's take a little drink here. Hold on a second here. Getting a little thirsty. Okay. Let me see here. While I was at a window of my house looking through the curtain, I saw some young men, and one in particular lacked common sense. He was crossing the street near the house of an immoral woman. Now, this is a pretty crazy story, folks. So, anyways, I just remember reading this. There's a lot of this going on in the Bible talking about these men that kind of fall for not such good and seedy women, which is pretty wild, right? Because they take these stories out of the Bible once again, and they sexualize women on TV. They turn around and now they're sexualizing children. You remember Netflix, folks, with that little cheerleading show that was on there that made the news. I think Stranger Things, there was a little girl that was like 14 years old, and they dolled her up to look like a prostitute. And not in the show. My wife just said it wasn't on the show that they dolled her up, but she was one of the stars. This is a little girl.
They took
Magazine covers. What was she, like 12?
She's underage.
Yeah. I mean, she's like you're talking about a 12-year-old girl that was famous in a show, and they take this girl and they put her into provocative sexualized photos on magazines. And then these are the same scumbag hypocrites that will try to sit there and preach about the Me Too movement and how women are being neglected and repressed on U.S. soil, when they're the ones promoting this propaganda against our girls. And then they try to get 1 out of every 1,000. Now, keep in mind, folks, Title IX, I've researched this. This is like women in sports and making sure our girls had funding. Having 3 daughters, I care greatly about this issue, more so than I probably ever did before I had any daughters. But I still thought it was important. But I think it's far more important now that I have daughters, that their success depends on it. Title IX, there's about 25 million girls in this country that are able to play sports. The number of girls that actually are involved in sports is probably 17, 18 million or so. So that's the ratio of K through 12. There's probably one confused boy that wants to be a girl and playing girls' sports out of every 1,000 girls. That's the numbers. I looked at the numbers. I just ran the math. 1 out of every 1,000 girls, there's one confused boy that wants to be a girl and compete, even though he's biologically at an unfair advantage over girls. That's just the way it is. And even if he had a sex reassignment surgery, he'd still be at an advantage to girls. And these lunatic lefties want to undermine parents and pulling their daughters out of sports, which I would argue this is a hill that we need to fight and die on as a society. We do not let them overrun our schools with these biological males, that we do not go back and pull our kids out of these schools and pull our daughters out of sports. We fire every teacher that promotes this. We get control of the school boards and fire every single one of them. And I would even say that we look to pass laws to pierce and strip all their pensions. You want to play this crap? Fine. You should have repercussions like the CEO. If you create a fraud as a CEO, you lose your pay package, you lose your pensions, you lose all your past, and you can go get money clawed back. We, the people of the United States, should go after people that are doing a fraud of what's the word I'm looking for? It's not just a disservice. I'm saying this is like a fraud against our humanity as people, as human beings. When you're committing, like literally, It's like a different type of war crime when you're committing crimes against our youth, our daughters, our young women in our society. The consequences should be super severe. Not only you lose your money, you lose your pension, and all the parents that were impacted by your insane lunacy, they should go after you and sue you for damages as well. Not any different than any CEO who is sued for a class action lawsuit for defrauding investors. You defrauded the community. You were supposed to stand for looking after our children, and you failed them. And not only did you fail them, you kept trying to fail them and institute things that would be a massive disservice to them and be harmful to them and their livelihood over the rest of their life. And that's just the way I feel. So when I'm reading this is what comes to my mind. So, in the twilight, this is, and I know this is about an immoral woman, and she convinces some gentleman to go sleep with her because her husband's away for days. Once again, the devil works in mysterious ways, I guess. The guy was weak. He ends up sleeping with her. And I guess I wouldn't be surprised if when we get to tomorrow or day after, he's going to be getting killed by the woman's husband. And, but anyways, that kind of behavior, where women are selling themselves, and they don't feel like they have a voice. They don't feel like they have economic opportunity. They're being held down by men in society. What do you think happens, folks? All you got to do is look at these, as President Trump would once say, these shithole countries that treat women as lesser people than men. And they have a lot of this stuff much more widespread than Judeo-Christian West does. Because when you treat women that horribly, the men in those societies are going to treat them more horribly. It shouldn't be a shock, folks. This isn't this isn't a stretch. When you treat women with disrespect like that, and you treat them, you treat them as though they're property, and you treat them like, they have less rights than a dog. A dog at least can be seen. It can smile at you. It can be happy to see you. And when women aren't treated with the respect where other human beings can see their face and get to see who they are as an individual, it's just as demeaning, folks. And that's a different form of slavery. And these sick bastards are coming into this country as well as in Europe, and they're trying to push this agenda for us to always wear these horseshit masks. And this is one of the reasons why I think we need to start waking the hell up and push back against this stuff, because the mask was never just about that. And I'm not even talking about what it is. You guys know what I'm talking about, because they're going to try to censor me if I talk about it. So all I'm saying is, ask yourself, go look into the history of why certain people around the world can't show their face when they go out in public. Try to find me an answer. You're going to find it difficult. You're going to find it pretty difficult to find out when they started putting that crap into place. And so we need to be very wary about this, and we need to draw a line in the sand and say enough is enough. How about you sons of bitches wear the masks in government, and any private citizens that don't want to wear it aren't going to wear it, and stay the hell away from them if it bothers you. And guess what? Those private citizens, you know what? They're going to just go to other businesses where they don't want to wear them either. Problem solved. I will gladly refuse to go to places as long as the government doesn't try to shut down anybody else. And you know what? We, the people, should say, you know what? Enough is enough. You can't shut down our businesses. You can't, without due process and without rights, and you can't try to pass rules or regulations that violate the Constitution. You're breaking the covenant. The covenant between the people and the government of the United States is the U.S. Constitution, and our constitutional rights have been violated over and over again, and we haven't done enough about it. So, I'm not sure what it's going to take to wake people up, but something's going to have to give at some point. So anyways, it was a long one. So I hope everybody has a wonderful evening. Thank you all for joining me on combining, the greatest book ever written with what's happening in the world today with politics And once again, I don't have to worry about losing my tax deferred status talking about religion and politics in the same podcast because I don't have a tax deferred status for having a church. so this is why you don't have more festive, religious leaders, because they're looking at the tax bill that might come if they do that. And Bobby doesn't care. So anyways, I hope you guys have a wonderful evening, and I will see you guys tomorrow. God bless you. God bless your family and friends. May God continue to bless the greatest nation ever in the history of the world. And may peace be with you. And for anybody joining who doesn't have peace, I do know that if you put God first, I have no doubt that peace will find you. So never forget that. All right. Thanks again, everybody. I'll see you tomorrow. Have a good night.